Go. All right. Hey, welcome back to Last Week Chopped Up. I'm here, as always, with my boy Jeremy. We grew up together in Houston, Texas, and our favorite thing to do every week was just chop it up. And in fact, we've been doing that for the last 30 minutes on the pre-call to the podcast because we just start doing exactly what we do on the podcast. And then Jeremy's always like, don't waste the good material. So I'm here with Jeremy. We're back with Last Week Chopped Up. We've been doing this. Yeah, okay. So now we're in the recorded session, Jeremy. We'll see how it differs. Man, how you doing this week?
I'm good, man. Yeah, that's becoming a line now. That's like, oh, save it for the pod. Save it for the pod, man. Don't waste good content. But besides that, man, been good. Just chilling out here, enjoying a little bit of LA life. Seeing how things a little different from Bay Area.
How are they different, man? What's up? What's been your initial experiences there and how they're different? Because I've lived in San Diego and San Francisco. You've lived in LA and San Francisco. They are quite different, but what's immediately struck out to you being down there for the first couple of weeks?
Honestly, right now it's like nothing too much because things are still in kind of that in between reopening state. Actually, San Francisco is a little bit ahead. They just reached the orange tier, which for us is like the second least restrictive. So on the way to full normalcy. What that means day to day is like restaurant could be open at 50% capacity instead of 25% capacity. More people can go to movie theaters, gyms, just regular old everything's open, and more people can go and do it. But down here, man, it's nothing really different. It's like, all right, here, maybe go get you a little something to eat, walk around.
Yeah.
But like if it's, hey, go turn up at the bar or the club or something, like maybe that's happening, but I'm not a part of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm still like, not just yet. But let me get these shots in the arm. Let's do it.
My parents got them, and they're like, "Oh, we were dining in, indoors doing our thing." I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's good. They live on an acre of land, and they're vaccinated, so they're genuinely COVID unaffected at this point." And I'm incredibly jealous because out here in the Netherlands, we're on still. You can go to a supermarket, nothing else is open, lockdown, and so
snap!
Oh yeah, no, we're sitting here on 6 months into just lockdown, and it's amazing what you can get used to, but everyone's just slowly going crazy also. So, and like we talked about it last week where you were like, you'd rather be in minimum security prison with a social group than being on lockdown alone. So, I don't think you would like it out here. Some of the people I work with are living alone, and it is brutal. At this point, it's been long. And up here in the winter, the days are super short. So now at least the days are fine. But yeah, it's been brutal, but we hanging in there. And it was a bit of what do you think last week? It wasn't the hottest news week. Partly, Donald Trump's out of office. I read that CNN's ratings are down 50%. Every cable news network's ratings are down. Washington Post readership is down 25% year on year. And yes, there's an election cycle to non and all that sort of stuff. But, the guy he was right about one thing, that he's good for cable TV business,
Yeah. When you are divisive, you get a lot of opinions about you, right? Yeah. So that is just feeding the beast, feeding this content 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
And, now we're on Joe Biden. It's like, oh, what are we saying about Joe today? It's like, oh, he tripped going up the stairs to the airplane.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
Cool.
And,
how many extortion to foreign countries did he do? Well, that's a zero. Cool.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Like most of the articles I read are like, hey, this Build Back Better plan. He's got up to a $5 trillion plan to invest in infrastructure and other things. Like, oh, policy? We're back to talking about policy decisions and debates? Oh, this feels foreign after 4 years of Trump. Like, actually having a plan or trying to move the country forward and talking about it. Like,
oh, my goodness. I love seeing
flip back into that mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll give you an idea of how important infrastructure is. I asked one of my boys I work with, he's from England, and he lives in Cambridge, and I asked him if he had ever been to Cornwall, which is at the bottom left-hand corner. And he's like, no, because driving east-west in England is impossible because they never built like an interstate equivalent system east-west. It's only north-south, and I've been there, and it's true. They literally can't do it. Like, it's like a 12-hour drive. I'm not making this up. You can ask any British person. I'm not making this up. They can't drive east-west. It only goes north-south. Like, you can drive. It's one-lane roads. I got off. I'm not making this up. I took a flight to go to Cambridge for work. I got off at Luton Airport, and I took a car, Uber, to the office. I was on one-lane roads. We had to pull over and let another car pass. And I was like, I texted my wife and I was like, I think I'm getting murdered here. Like, this can't be right, but it is. They never built infrastructure. Infrastructure is so important. So important.
Yeah, man. But that is very unexpected to hear that it's like, hey, you need to go 90 miles west. It's like, well, I'll be there in 6 hours. I got to go drive up, make a U-E, and drive back down.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So we'll see how that goes. It's the usual political rhetoric of the turtle, orange turtle, man. Mitch McConnell's like, oh, we don't want to do this. We're not do spending. We're like, okay, we're back to this again. Republicans are going to get nothing through. But I think Joe is definitely moving to, hey, would like to work together, but unlike Barack, I don't care. We own everything. If you don't want to work with it, I'm gonna pass through as much as I can without your support. If you don't want to give it to us, screw bipartisanship. And to me, I'm glad to hear that, right? Because bipartisanship mostly comes out of Democrats wanting to work with Republicans. Republicans are like, we're in power, we don't care, we're not even going to say this word. So I'm like, okay, just do that. Let's not pretend. If we're going to be bifurcated, let's just lean all the way into this and say, okay, fine, you don't want to work with us, great. Like, all I'm worrying about is Joe Manchin. Make sure that guy doesn't gum up the works.
Just get him on board. I think with this infrastructure project, you put enough in there that's just great for the economy, and someone like Joe Manchin likes it. And then you also put in there universal PreK, which I think would be great for working families and a really great step forward. And then he likes it. And I'll tell you one thing. Once you give everybody universal PreK, ain't nobody running on, hey, by the way, I'm taking away your child care. Never gonna happen. So like that, I love the idea of these programs that are just ultimately quite popular. And I think it's a brilliant move. And I think Biden learned a lot seeing Obama. I think his heart was in the right place with the bipartisanship, but ultimately just seeing that wasn't in the cards. The Republicans were not willing to play ball.
Yep. And it's crazy. Funny enough, like you look in the Senate, it's like, all right, how many people were in power 12 years ago? When Barack started this off, it's like, all right, so I see a majority of you gummed up the works last time we were in power. Like, I see these same faces. We're over it. So yeah, looking forward to it. We'll see what actually gets through. I think it's some interesting ideas and stuff, like free community college. I think makes sense. Not a crazy cost. And if you want to educate yourself or do a first 2 years here, transfer out, it's like, that's a great head start for a lot of folks. So
I love it.
So we'll see where it goes. Right. It's going to be a lot of fighting between here and getting something done.
I think there is. I think the Democrats also learned a bit from the Republicans had their majority in Congress, presidency, and the Senate, and they didn't get a lot done because they did what the Democrats did in 2008, which is they infought. And I think the Democrats now are like, look, leave that aside. Like, let's get stuff passed, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're in this tent, we're doing this, and that's the price of admission. And I think that's ultimately really smart, and it's more how the coalition governments out in Europe work and other places in the world. So I think it's smart. I'm loving to see it, and I think Joe Biden is turning into, I don't know, I got more love for. I was sleeping on Joe Biden, so I think we talked about it before. So I'm loving to see it. I hope this does go through. Exciting times. But ultimately, the number of page views and eyeballs and users driven by an infrastructure bill versus a Stormy Daniels scandal are different numbers. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
And we're feeling that, and it cannot be denied that this is also up. So I like it. I like it. It's exciting, but no, it's not driving the same attention. But that's a good thing. Everyone when Trump was in office talking about they miss boring Obama, and now I think I've never heard, while ratings are down, no one is saying they missed the guy. You know what I'm saying? No one's saying that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So now seeing if he's going to spin up his own Twitter or whatever he's talking about, it's if I was him, I would do something too. He's got a very loyal following.
Yeah.
Why not turn that into money? He's been pretty good at doing that before, right? If you think
he's got debts and stuff,
spinoffs and putting his name. Yeah. It's like I got bills to play. Y'all now see how much I owe some folks in China. Some of my previous lenders are not lending me anymore. So I need y'all on Trump Twitter, hitting your likes, paying whatever. Like, I need that money. He's got a hell of a mailing list, right? I think it'll be decently successful whenever he rolled something out.
Yeah.
And then we could have more CNN and Fox News talks about how scary his platform is and the crazy stuff he's saying on there now.
True. But I don't know. I saw some pictures of him at some gala they did at Mar-a-Lago, and he was getting a little bad press over it. He looked kind of like hell, and he does have a lot of lawsuits, and he is, getting up there in years. So there's also like a, will he punch himself? Look, he has got a mailing list. He's going to make some money. He's not going to give up, but I don't know. I think it will be, a low-key cesspool of crazy, and it will be more talked about than utilized, but we'll see. I could be wrong.
All right. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes out. Well, that is This Week in Politics. Or,
there you are. We started out with politics.
Long politics talk.
What you want to talk about? Are you at all, did the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament bring you back on board of college basketball? The Pac-12 showing up, so did that help out? Or
talk to me, baby. Yeah, Pac-12. It was getting a lot of hate, on Pac-12 ain't nothing, and we came out slapping fools. Yeah. So, I mean, as predicted, it reels you back in. It's not like I fell in love with any teams per se, but the amount of upsets, it's just like, ooh, wait, a 15 over a 2? Ooh, another upset. It was just upsets rolling. So, it brought me back in because number one, alma mater, right? USC, we doing things. Nice first round win. And then we slapped the hell out of Kansas in the second round. Worst loss they've ever had in the tournament. Pretty much after 5 minutes into the second half, me and my buddy who I was watching the game with, who also went to SC, we're like, all right, well, I don't know. Do you want to do work or shots or turn something else on? Because we're up 25 and it doesn't look like Kansas has any heart left in them. So it's great to see that on a personal level. But yeah, man, just the upsets. Yeah. Like it's hard to not, be working, look at ESPN scores and like, oh, upset alert. Yeah. Boop, let's turn on the TV and see how this game finishes.
I'll say, I mean, one, it's getting me more hype, the upsets for sure. I'll call out University of Houston, who I'm a big fan of, is also in the Sweet 16, so we got some squads there. But it's interesting to me. I read it's the highest average seed in the Sweet 16 in the current tournament configuration, which to me makes a lot of sense because without the non-conference play, you really had no idea how good these conferences were. If you look at the Pac-12, I was reading why was the Pac-12 underrated. There were some bad early non-conference losses. And it's like literally 7 games. The whole thing is on like 7 games. The Big Ten had a couple good early wins, and now they're getting swamped upon. And you look at it and you're like, look, it's sort of like your initial assessment just gets pushed through, and it just turns out to be wrong. It's interesting, like statistically, it should be the most uncertainty, and it was.
Yeah, it's funny. You bring up the Big Ten, who everyone's like, this is the best conference. They thought they were going to get 10 teams in, they get 9. And one of 9 teams made to the Sweet 16, and you're like, best conference around, right? So,
and the one that made it wasn't the one that was supposed to.
Right? Yeah. Like Michigan's the only one left, right?
Oh, Michigan. Sorry, I thought, Michigan actually made it.
So they're 1 seed, but like, a lot of people
Illinois didn't make it. Illinois was supposed to, and they didn't make it. Yeah.
And they lost to Sister Jean's boys. I don't know if you remember Sister Jean, because she gets more press than damn near anyone.
Oh, I'm a big Sister Jean fan, man. I read her pregame sermon talking about tactics and offensive rebounding rates and stuff like this, and I was like, that's dope, man. If I'm 101 and I'm with it, that's a blessed life. But good for her for being there, and good for them. I hope they win it all.
Right, like I hope I get to be 101 and I'm talking about the NBA and whatever, like LeBron v3 that's around at that time. I'm like, LeBron needs to stop, new LeBron needs to stop with that drop coverage. He really needs to hedge harder on the pick and rolls. Like I hope I'm like Sister Jean and can talk like that. But Loyola's a funny one because if you look at like the analytics, everyone's saying they're crazy underrated. It's like
top 10 team,
12 seed or something. They're like, they should be like a 3 seed.
Yeah,
But I think to me, it's also a second part of we're seeing just how much of an advantage is built into the like big programs and seeding and where you play, because kind of like the NBA bubble. Everyone's in the same place at the same hotels. There's no hey, I'm UNC. We're a 1 seed and we're playing in Greensboro.
Yeah, we're playing in
that's
Greensboro.
90 miles of here.
I know.
And to me, that's another thing of like, there's probably more bias into like how we plan things than people really were feeling. Like, it's there, but like, wait, if we throw you all in the same place, like we cannot predict very well what's going to happen at all.
No.
Huh. Right.
This is where, like, honestly, if you're the Missouri Valley Conference, which is what Loyola Chicago's in, they've been talked about for years as a threat. They have, honestly, statistically, they're not that different from the Big Ten this year. They really aren't. And they put a couple teams in, low seeds and all this stuff, and you look at the Big Ten, and it's you with all these non-conference games not being there. I think you got to rely more on these statistical models, and I think these statistical models are ultimately showing up. And if you remember, like 10 years ago in baseball, no one talked about WAR, wins above replacement. No, people talk about batting average, maybe on base percentage, maybe also, OPS.
Crazy question for you. I know VORP was a thing. What is VORP? That's value over replacement?
Value over replacement, yeah.
Value.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
VORP, I think it's the John Hollinger
How is VORP and WARP different?
I think one is just dollarized and one is win-dized. So what the VORP thing is trying to do is to say how much should you pay, and the WAR is just saying, look, how many wins is this providing, but it's not trying to factor in the salary cap, or it's not trying to factor in the opportunity cost of $1. And so
okay.
you know, like that's what it's trying to do. And so, but the whole WAR thing is like, you know, I was doing sports analytics in 2008 and part of my PhD effing around, and it's taken over. And if you look at, I mean, baseball players, history's being reevaluated over underrated, overrated guys. And yeah, there's more data now on defense, and same with basketball. But I think it hasn't hit the rankings in college sports yet as much. And I think it will, because if you look, ahead of time, the statistics said Loyola Chicago, the most underseeded team by far, and they start rolling. They said Syracuse is underseeded. They're rolling. They said the Pac-12. It's all based on a few games, and if you look at some of the more advanced analytics, it didn't say they were as bad as everybody thought, because the rankings are all based on one bad non-conference loss or something. And you're like, sure, they didn't show up. Any college basketball, these guys can lose to anybody. They're still kids. They can show up and just lose, and it's not that over a 30-game season. It's like, it's, to me, you have to fact, it's still basketball, and they're still kids. So I don't know. To me, I got rehyped, partly because our squads are in it, and partly because I like it's statistically interesting. So let's who's your pick now? Let's put it on the record. Who's your pick to win it all?
I'll be honest. I probably only know 3 of the actual teams or 4.
I love it. It's an honesty-based podcast, so we're sitting here talking. So you got Gonzaga, you got Michigan, one seed still left.
I mean, it's hard to pick against Gonzaga because they just roll everybody.
Yeah,
they're just like, hey, we had the worst game of our season last game, and I still won by like 14 or 15 points. So, it's hard to pick against them. Like, it's getting really like Gonzaga versus the field type of feeling. Yeah. But hey, we've had this before, like Kentucky teams that were undefeated, and they're like, damn, y'all lost to Wisconsin for real? Like, we go do this. So it's hard to pick against the Zags. To me, I'm just looking for more interesting game, more upsets. Like, it's crazy. Like, Oral Roberts is in this, right? Like, I think they're a 15 seed or 13
Here's
seed.
What's even crazier. I looked this up. The guy, Oral Roberts, 1, 2 facts about him. He's Native American, didn't know that. 2, he only died in 2008. This guy's been alive this whole time. Yeah, Oral Roberts is a dude's name. And first of all, it's a guy. Second of all, the guy lived like 100 years. And thirdly, he just passed away in 2008. So he's been rolling around. Like, imagine if there was like Jeremy University.
Be like, what's up? I'm here. Catch me on my YouTube channel as you root for the school.
Yeah. I was like that because my wife was like, "Hey, what's Oral Roberts?" And I was like, "I'm pretty sure it's in Oklahoma. It's a religious school, and I don't know anything more than that." But Native American guy, and he lived like 100 years old, and he just died 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So yeah, that's your fun fact of the day about Oral Roberts. I don't know any other things about this. So he's like a Sister Jean type individual. All
right. Well, appreciate that knowledge. Right. And funny you bring up names of stuff I didn't know about them. Maybe I should have the random name look up I did.
What's I'm out of the loop because I'm a little less hip than you have been our whole lives. But we were talking about something ahead of time. What did you ask me that you're like, how do you not know what that is?
Oh, I think we're talking about billions. Yeah. I think that was what me and my boy did after the SC Glow. We're like, all right, well, let's get our rewatch of Billions. And not only did you say you haven't seen Billions, your question was, what is Billions?
What is Billions? So for our listeners, what is Billions?
Yeah, so that is wild. So I guess quick synopsis: TV show, Showtime. It's about a guy who owns a hedge fund, Bobby Axelrod. It's called AxeCap. The actor is the guy from Homeland, the redhead dude. If you ever watched Homeland,
Oh yeah, I
do you
love
know
that
what
guy.
Homeland is?
Yeah, I love that guy. I'm not
Okay.
gonna guess his name because we didn't prep the show notes.
I think his
Adrian
name's Damian Lewis. So
Damian Lewis. I
I'll
was
go
gonna
ahead
say
and
it's not Adrian
close
Brody.
that one for
Damian
you.
Lewis. I love that guy. He was in Life too. It's
Yeah.
2 seasons NBC. Great show. That guy's in it. All
Right. So
right.
he's like, yeah, so he's like the main guy over the top, oh, you get to look in the hedge fund world, this Manhattan, going to the Hamptons, how you spend stupid money. And then the other side is Paul Giamatti plays someone in the like US district of something high up there. And they're trying to go after him for all the different fraud and things, skating against the line they do to make money. So it's like, oh, they find out insider info, make trades, do this and that. So it's kind of a real back and forth on these two. And the unique perspective is they have a psychiatrist in-house at the hedge fund, and that is Paul Giamatti's wife. So she's always conflicted between work, husband life. And the crazy thing, here's a spoiler alert for you. The first scene, I believe, of this series is Paul Giamatti with
it's not a spoiler,
gag in his
scene,
mouth,
bro.
And like tied up, being pissed on. That is how this series does this, because they're in the like BDSM.
What?
Tie yourself. Yeah.
Pissed, you done knocked the smile off my face with that one.
Yeah. So you open. I'm like, oh, let's see this. What's up with this hedge fund? Why is this man tied up and getting pissed on in the first minute of the show? Like this is not what I thought I signed up for. Right. So it starts off with a bang.
Right. You want to hear some NSFW stuff. So last week we were talking about screw up of the week, which we're about to get to, and you were quoting a racist individual that used the N-word, and you were quoting it. Being a black man, you were quoting it. My wife actually walked in the room, and I was like, "Yeah, just to remind our listeners, Jeremy's black. That's why he's using that word." And afterwards, she's like, "Hey, I don't think rightfully like." saying the N-word on the podcast is a good idea. And I was like, no, let me be very clear. He was quoting a racist. He was just directly quoting someone. It's not a word we're using on the podcast. And she's like, oh, thank God, because I thought you were about to get your ass fired from work talking about N-words and shit on the podcast and stuff. And I was like, no. That's not how we talk. But yeah, it was like he was quoting somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I might have did it not justice. I don't know if I did the hard R.
I don't think we can throw a hard R on the show, man. We got to bleep that out like that.
But that's what he
no,
said.
That's what he said.
R.
I guess,
that is
but
distinctive, right?
I know.
I'm like, bruh, hard R is just like, ooh, okay, yeah, that's just real hateful. Like, god damn.
Yeah, no, that's something like no. If you that's not something. I remember growing up and someone said, "What's the difference?" And they said one, said the other, like someone that shouldn't be saying it at all, and it's like. All right, here's the situation. You've now just effed up every which way because you shouldn't even be in this conversation. Avoid the word. Remember when that guy I lived with dropped the word in front of you and you damn near had to haul his ass outside?
Man, yeah. Luckily it didn't become a full-on problem, but I just remember being like, yo, you better get this motherfucker, man. Like, I don't this dude don't know me like that, and it's it is not a casual drop around me.
I remember thinking we 50-50. It's because, let's be honest, you're visiting me. We're lifelong friends. Some idiot I'm living with, white guy says the N-word, and he was trying to say it like he was cool, like in a rap song or something, but doesn't matter. And we walked to the kitchen, and it was like, you're like, all right, let's talk about this. Oh, am I beating him up? And I'm like, okay, I appreciate you bringing me into the conversation strategically. Like we're lifelong friends. I appreciate that, Jeremy, just from back then of like, let's discuss this before you just swing on this dude in the house. But, it did. And after that, I remember you were like, hey, are you still living with that racist dude? I'm like, nah. I'm like, nah. I was like,
right?
Cool.
Yeah. It's like, I got enough respect for you. It'd be like, so we got a problem brewing real quick here. So you got about 1 minute to figure out what solution we should go with. Cause it's go time, man. It's it's one of these there's no reason. Hell, even my personal usage is much less than it was at one time. I'm certainly not perfect with it, but yes, more mindful.
More mindful of it. So let's if we're talking screw up of the week. Chopped and screwed. That's how we do it. I think we have a pretty unambiguous. So what's our screw up of the week, Jeremy?
Yeah, man. So this is kind of unexpected to take us right back to our home, home place at Houston. But I think we have to give Deshaun Watson our screw up of the week. I don't know the current count, but I know there's 10 plus lawsuits against him for different massage therapists and trying to force him to touch his junk, or
Forced oral sex
I
is
don't
in
know,
one of the
some sort of
complaints.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just a wide variety of one-on-one. You're at the house. Oopsies, this towel fell
Yep.
off my penis, and can you do something with that there?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a lot of suits. I don't know. There's a lot of specific different cases. Not exactly sure what I think on all, but it's smoke is coming from here. There's some sort of fire. There's something inappropriate that has happened. What now has it been 15 or 20 women? That's a big ass number. That might be too many, but if you told me, 3, 5, like this is what went down, like, yeah, it's feels right.
There's a book. Remember that guy that wrote that book, Everest into Thin Air? John Krakauer. He wrote a book called Missoula, about a Montana State, or I think it's Montana State, the Grizzlies, and it was about rape cases out there, and a star quarterback that had a rape case against him, and it went through the statistics on this. And I think one of the things it was sobering. I read it as part of my book club. One of the things people don't realize is that yes, does happen that false accusations happen, but they are incredibly rare. And it is very, very rare for multiple false accusations to happen, because it requires these people are deposed separately. They don't know each other. They can't communicate with each other, because if there's a record of communicating, it's going to come out. And so for me, 10 women are telling a very similar story independently. It's 100% chance he did something completely immoral and wrong. I would not be surprised if it's a Darren Sharper situation where he ends up serving time. I'll be honest with you. I know that the plaintiff's attorneys are talking about grand jury investigations, but I'll be honest with you. I don't think we see him playing football again in the NFL. I think his career is over, and I think it should be. And this is, I would say, the worst offseason a team can possibly have. And the Texans have done a lot of self-inflicted damage with their general manager being himself, someone that has created some problems for the squad, but nothing compares to sexual assault. So to me, I think it's going to come out. And I think anyone talking about there's two sides to a story, well, there's 22 sides of a story. And I would say I'd take the 22 over the one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But I think him not playing in the NFL again, I think I'm going to have to disagree with you there. This is the NFL. They pretty much can overlook or get past anything if someone's good. And I think Deshaun's 24, 25. He could, even if has to go away for, let's say, 2 years, comes back, he's 28. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Mike Vick went away, served time, came back, started again. Now, yes, this is a different circumstance, but if we look back to, let's say, Greg Hardy, who I believe was assaulting and threw his pregnant wife on guns and beat her and all kinds of stuff. But you know what? He made it back and played for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like, I think the NFL is a second chance, third chance. We're not going to talk about this league because we can talk about Tyreek Hill on the Chiefs. No one talks about all the trouble he's got in before, and it was a lot. And it was, I'm pretty sure beating women.
Yeah.
But if you're fast and you can perform, they'll find a way to make that story, those stories go away. You never hear about them again. You go like, God damn, that boy Tyreek can run. Like, you just talk about that. It's not the NBA.
You're bringing up
NBA, I think.
No, in the NBA, I don't think Adam Silver would have played in a game of basketball. I mean, but I agree. In the NFL, they don't really. I mean, Ray Rice was on tape knocking someone out, his wife or his fiance out, and Goodell saw the video and reasoned, as long as no one sees this, we'll just suspend you for 2 games. And that tells you the character of the individual. I mean, imagine if someone came to you, one of your employees, in your team elevator, in your work elevator, and was like, "Hey, this is an employee leaving with his partner," and then knocks her cold out, drags her out of the elevator, walks out of the building. You're not going to be like, "Well, if no one sees that, we're not going to have a problem. You're suspended for a week, are you?" Like, it's not how it's going down.
And it's such a man. It's funny you bring that up, because that style of employment, right? You don't investigate outside of like the law for most things, right? This is atypical, right? I would not have info of like, hey, HR's hit me up. Come listen to this. We got a tape of, I don't know, a junior PM saying the N-word on YouTube. What do you want to do? I'm like, what? What am I dealing with here? Like, this is someone's time away from work. They're doing whatever. I'm like, I don't know if if that's the bar, right, on let's say normal jobs, I don't, a significant amount of people we work with probably would be fired, right? We wouldn't have like
Yeah.
it's very, sort of murky in that way. Now, again, these are extremes, like 22 cases, literally knocking out your wife, and it's caught on tape. But if that was brought to your job, that's very atypical to have to deal with that, right? Because you're just saying this is stuff that often off campus at not a company event, and you may not be prosecuted for it yet. You might literally get no legal repercussions from this, but you can't work here.
No, I agree. It is, and you see this coming up with freedom of speech laws, and let's move it to an area where it's less, in these cases, I think we can all agree it looks like there's criminal activity at play. Whether it results in criminal prosecution, that's another thing. And as an employer, typically you can do a lot of things to ensure your workplace is safe, and if people have this history and so forth. So when people are doing acts like this, I think you're in a much more secure legal place to take action. Secondly, NFL contracts have, a general provision of if you do something that brings down the image of the league, and so they're legally protected. But legal protection doesn't mean a legal obligation. But if you take it a step further and you look at just saying terrible things, saying a terrible thing that's not inducing violence will never be legal in the United States. I mean, the president used to do it. And so that's one where I agree with you. It takes you to a very weird place. But as a leader in an organization, I do think it's difficult for it to happen on my watch. But it's a really tough one because I agree with you that if I was the GM, that's the thought experiment I'm in, and one of my players said something particularly terrible, it could bring down the image of the league and you could suspend them. But ultimately, you're right. Other people in the economy are not being held to that same standard. And that's at least there's a tension there that is worth talking about, and not jumping to one side or the other, and just admit that there's a tension there and there's a discussion to be had there.
Yeah, I think an interesting kind of thought experiment or case on this would be, let's say, what was that wideout on the Eagles back in the day got caught dropping an N-bomb on something.
Oh, the Jeremy Shockey, or no, I don't want to put a guy's name.
No, it was.
I know you're talking about.
I don't know, but yeah,
I know it was at a concert. He was yelling. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's like, let's say that, and then let's say the same thing happened at like a tech company. I don't know, whatever. Make up whichever one you
sure,
like. Google,
make
Facebook,
it up. Google.
Wow,
Let's say Google.
Right? Google. So I think in the football situation, your workforce on the field, not in the executive room, because why would there be diversity there?
No, not in the NFL.
Playing look, a lot more like me than you. So if you drop an N-bomb and this guy's in the locker room with you, right, as leadership, you probably got to act because they're saying, I ain't playing with that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right. I got problems. Yeah. Like you're making, the job harder. I'm not going to work. Right. But in tech, there's not a lot of people who look like me who are going to be around. So then it's a lot more like, oh, I know you shouldn't say this, but like, what do we do? And I'm not sure that the same decision gets made if most of your workforce looks like me or if most of them don't.
Implicitly, that's like, I think what you're saying is that's a pretty bad reason to allow for that kind of behavior, right? Just because it's like saying, well, we don't have a diverse workforce, so that we let people say things that would completely prohibit, people of color from wanting to work here because we sanction this bullshit, So it's kind of,
like I don't know if it's sanctioned per se, but I think decision making is different if you don't have full representation there. And maybe I'm wrong. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you dropped the N-word, you got to go. But I feel like that's not the case. That there's a lot more of that. They're just like, you shouldn't have said this. Don't say it again. Let's keep it pushing. We're not going to make a deal out of this, right?
And that's ultimately what I presume happens for most low-level employees. And just like in a public figure is held to a different standard, I think it's the case that organizations do seem to hold their higher-level employees to a different standard. And a lot of U.S. law is based on that idea, right? If you're a fireman and your lack of basic common sense in your house lets your house burn down because you left gasoline out or whatever, you probably are going to jail for criminally negligent homicide. But if you're an 18-year-old with your first house that's never owned a house and didn't know this could happen, you're probably not going to get prosecuted at all. Your knowledge and your position in a situation does affect the consequences you face under U.S. law. And for example, officers of the court, lawyers, have much higher penalties for perjury for this reason, because they have to understand exactly. So I think that's also fine. But again, to the discussion we're having, there's a nuance to it that is really hard to have a discussion. And one of the things, I don't know, like, I don't know how to talk about this without getting a little awkward, but we've been friends forever, right? And you're black and I'm kind of white, right? I'm half Indian, half white, right? So, and we've been able to talk about race for 25 years together, right? And we've been able to talk about it in a place where if I say something that I'm tripping on, you know, it doesn't come from a place of me having hate in my heart. You know, it's me being uninformed. And I'll talk to my wife actually about sexism, and I'll sometimes be tripping, and then she'll inform me, and she knows it's not coming from a place of being sexist. It just comes from a place of being uninformed. But how many people have that, man? How many people have you met that they have that? Or it's not like, well, this is the first black person I'm really talking to, so I've never actually just been able to get course corrected over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I don't know if it's the best, but I've gone to, a lot of diverse schools, diverse friend group. And, I don't say I'm, the black friend, but I'm like, hey, I'm open and down to talk about anything, pretty much anyone. Right. And I think I have, seen over time, I think it's more so the hesitancy to talk about it is the actual issue, right? Because it's like, oh, this is a taboo topic. And to me, I feel like this should not be taboo, because whether we talk about it or not, it greatly impacts my life every day.
Yeah.
Usually who I'm talking to, it has very little impact on their life every day. And to me, that's why it's very different to me, but it's open to talk about it. And it's funny, it's more George Floyd stuff came up, and these conversations came up at work. And, those were interesting discussions because we never talked about race ever in work before. And I think, to me, the thing that's kind of, I don't know, funny, but a lot of white people feeling awkward and like, hey, I talked to the few of us black folks, so y'all comfortable talking about this? I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think most people don't get is that the uncomfortableness is on the other side, right? Like that is a self-reflection of you're uncomfortable talking about this. Right. I'm very fine. Because again, I deal with this every day of life. This is not a new topic.
It's not exactly. Being black's not a new thing for you. Having a white friend is not a new thing for you. That's been your whole life. You've had diverse friends and you've had social groups that are all black and more white and so on and so forth, and so have I. And so it's not, but like when we talk about this topic of like, what if someone said the N-word, should they get fired or not? I think you and I can have a conversation where it's very nuanced, right? Because I don't feel, neither of us are feeling like, I don't feel like I need to say to you, my black friend will fire the mofo. And you don't feel like, for you, like you said, you're not feeling like you're just being you, but I don't feel it, because so now we can say, well, it's nuanced. But a lot of people don't have that luxury, man. That's one of the things I do think growing up in Houston. But look, it's why diversity matters. A lot of times, is like, look, you don't know all the stuff you don't know. You've been black your whole life. You know a lot of stuff I'll never know, and you've told me about things that I had never experienced. My wife has told me about things that I'll never experience about being a woman. But on the same time, when you're telling me, you're not like, I can't believe you didn't know this, because you're like, you wouldn't have. How would you have known this? Kind of thing. And it's like you said, it's not awkward for you. You're like, I'm helping you out, but. To me, it kind of, a lot of times, like you said, that conversation of like, ask the question, ask what you want to ask. Don't feel too awkward about it. If it comes from if your heart's in the right place, we'll be able to tell. You know what I mean?
Right.
If it's, can I say the hard R N-word, then you're just like, I also know where your heart's at.
Yeah, it's like, you're not starting this off right.
No.
Like, if your heart's not in the right place, like if you think it is in the right place, this ain't how you start.
No.
And the answer is, the answer to that question before you ask it, some bitch.
No, we can triage that shit real fast, real fast. Well, what else? So we have our European News of the Week segment, which I think this week in European news you're gonna appreciate. So you're sitting there in Joe Biden's America, which is vaccinating people like crazy, and things are opening up. I'll tell you, out in Europe, in the Netherlands, cases are up 50% week on 2 weeks. In Spain, they're up. In France, they're up. Germany just went through full lockdown. No major European countries will allow any sort of major gatherings around Easter. France has a 6 p.m. curfew. 6 p.m. curfew. Hear me out. I'm in the Netherlands. I can't go out and do anything except go to the supermarket. Europe's on that long wave COVID. That's the European News of the Week. The third if it's not a wave, it's certainly a bit of a ripple. It's back, and it has taken the continent, and it has paralyzed the economic recovery out here.
Yeah, bro. I cannot imagine right now if U.S. or at least, well, I don't say U.S. right, because definitely state by state,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
not the whole country, but like if in California, we're just right now like, hey, it's back full on lockdown. Don't leave your house. Order in everything. Don't go to the grocery store. Like, I, I would be losing my mind. Like, to be honest, I don't. I think even if that was attempted to roll out again here, I don't know how it, like the percentage of people complying,
No,
much less
no,
because people are fed up. Like, nope,
no,
nope, not doing
no.
it again.
If the
Like,
U.S.
you
hadn't
should.
had good vaccine distribution, there would just be stacks of people getting COVID and more deaths because
Oh,
the compliance is done. I mean, Europeans are way more compliant, the studies show, than Americans. Like statistics show this. And even now, people are kind of like, I don't think so. There's a much more non-compliance going on, and that's part of the third wave. So, I am so thankful. Biden got the operation going and everything like that. And the Trump administration actually does deserve some credit too. I read a long form article in the New York Times about how the European governments really kind of bought the vaccines like a retail customer. Like, I'll just buy 20 million delivered to my doorstep. Whereas America and the UK more were sort of distribution partners with them. Like, you're going to make this, but I'm going to do all the subcontracting for you. So you're not going to hire a subcontractor to deliver them to me. I'm going to do that. And if you look at all these distribution problems, it's because a vaccine maker is hiring subcontractors to distribute. Now, I'm not going to lay into like the complexities of supply chain management. I'll tell you, the kind of people that know how to make vaccines are not always the exact same people that know how to distribute at the new, never done before at fast scale. These are different skill sets, and they're entirely separate. So
wait, you tell me a company can't both be AstraZeneca and like UPS at the
that's
same
right.
time?
There wasn't AstraZeneca wasn't UPS, and UPS wasn't AstraZeneca. And AstraZeneca had about the same probability of delivering packages on time as UPS had to make a vaccine, and that's what's going on. And so now Trump had no plan of how to actually open the sites, but to actually get them in trucks to show up to a site, it was pretty good. And then the actual like shots in the arm, Biden's helped out a ton. But yeah, Europe sort of was like, we'll just, like the market will figure it out, which is interesting because you think of European as more of less open, less capitalist economies, and U.S. as more. But the U.S. government came in there and said, I'm the big fish. I have the purchasing power. I'm going to control this end to end, which is how I would have done it as well with, how I work with. But yeah, no, AstraZeneca is not UPS. So that's the European News of the Week. AstraZeneca is not. Yeah. Which, by the way, our shit talking last week about AstraZeneca, the vaccine's been reapproved, which we said would happen. So it's still the screw up of the week.
Even though they did have to republish their numbers, they published initial numbers. Independent boards like, hold up, like y'all got some numbers that we're not feeling. And I'm like, whoopsies, it is slightly less effective than the numbers we could publish. Like, guys, come on, you're only getting questioned. Like, get your shit together.
Review it. Like, it's I don't know. It's there. The same honorable mentions keep happening. These screw uppers keep getting back in the news. So AstraZeneca back in the mix. And I know we have 5 minutes left, so I'll give you. So I know you did the tech news of the week last week. So I want to discuss something with you, which is the what I will call like the Reddit army. And so a Reddit army situation happened. We saw that with GameStop, but a different one happened this week, which is, and I won't give you all the details on it, but essentially what happened is Reddit hired an employee as an administrator to manage some of the subreddits. And this employee has a history of what some deem to be pro-pedophilia commentary. And I won't go further than that, but she's also someone that has run for office in the United Kingdom before. And so what happened, apparently, is that Reddit hired this person and then set up a scraper on their site to remove any mention of her name if it ever happened. And no one noticed this. This is just happening for like 6 months, apparently. Crazy.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been happening for 6 months. So there was some UK politics, some small UK politics sub, and there's some article about this woman. She ran for office in 2018, some legitimate article. And they were commenting, and people started noticing her name was being scrubbed from the comments. And we're like, why the heck is that happening? And they started digging around, and they figured out that this woman had been hired by Reddit and had this past about potentially pro-pedophilia commentary and certainly some actions that looked like quite at least open to pedophilia in ways that you and I would certainly not be. And then what Reddit did their thing, the Reddit subreddits did their thing where they like turn off because the moderators can make the subreddits private. So I woke up and went on Reddit yesterday and like our news is off, our world news is off, all my subreddits are offline. And then I was out of the loop, I had to figure it out. But it's this kind of Reddit revolt thing. It's interesting because there's more and more of this sort of Reddit activism of everybody is now twisted up on this issue. And it sort of gets back to what we were talking about earlier, which is let's assume everything what they're saying is true. This individual, this woman in the past made comments that were not appropriately deferential to the victims of pedophilia at the very least, and it taken further, seemingly open to views like those controversial views that there's sort of a love situation going on there. At least her husband has been. So let's assume that's true. I'm not saying it is. Let's assume it is. Do you fire this person if you're Reddit? If you didn't know when they were hired, I don't think you set up this web scraper thing. But what do you do, Jeremy? It's a tough one. As we just talked about, we sort of set it up. It's sort of tough one. What do you do?
Yeah, so that is a tough one there, right? You're like, wait, what's your past? Like, I think it has to come back some to what is it? What are your values as a company? Like you certainly live the Reddit life, Reddit world much more than I do. But
Yeah.
if you're generally like we are open to commentary and
Yeah.
free exchange of information and we don't want to be restrictive. Like I think that is something for you to lean on. Like, hey, okay, I know there's some questionable things here, but this is before being hired or it's association with dad or husband or other stuff, but this might not be the person and where they are now. So I
Yeah.
think you're kind of open to having that
Yeah.
discussion, but it is one it's like, man, when you're trying to run a business, you're like, this is some shit I just don't want to deal with though. Like I know it's that you're like, this is not how you want to spend your morning scrum meeting of like, okay, what random employee information came in today that we got to deal with. It's not
Yeah.
anything any manager is looking to deal with.
No.
So
No.
I don't know. I'm glad it's not on my plate. But
I don't
it's a
know.
tough one. Also, hot off the presses to let you know we're recording this. Appears Aaron Gordon is getting traded to the Nuggets.
Well, I'm glad he's not going to the Rockets because I was not high on him. He
Yeah.
is he is a dunker. He does add a lot of energy, but he's not a very efficient scorer and he's a bad passer. So I don't know. You like that move?
I mean, I don't know. They're going to do something. It's not finalized yet, but hey, the Nuggets they think they're in a zone to win. I feel like everyone sort of thinks the NBA championships open this year with the Lakers
Yeah.
having, LeBron's hurt, AD's hurt. They're going
Yeah.
to be a 4, 5, 6 seed, whoever. No, so I think it's kind of one of those. Everyone thinks it's our year.
Yeah.
So everyone's making the big move. But I don't know. The kid's 25, maybe new environment, and just not being in this terrible losing hole
It's hard.
of
You're right.
the Magic. Is like, okay, man, reset. Sometimes you just need a reset in life. Like, hey, you're the clear number 3 or 4 here. Like,
Yeah.
so no one's expecting you to be a number 2, and
Yeah.
maybe you just got to find your right role.
Yeah, it's true. At a lower usage rate, the guy might be a lot more efficient. And in unrelated news, you wouldn't know what to do if one of your former employees had past views that were not consistent with your values or the company's, but they could be a changed person. Dude, I don't know what. Honestly,
Yeah.
sometimes the Reddit mob gets so hyped on something where I'm like, look, I don't know about this whole scraper. I want to know what the heck they were doing with that. Like that, it sort of seems like the cover up was like, wait, is Reddit censored? Like with Reddit, it's not supposed to be censored, but I don't know. It's like, I think these are one of those things that like, you know what? If I would want to have a discussion, I'd want to bring in an ethicist. I'd want to bring in people that have been victims. If I really wanted to do it, I want to bring in people that are victims, people that have been reformed. It turns out, for the record, her father is in prison for pedophilia. So, it might be something that she was exposed to growing up. And it might be that, that's a factor, and that psychologists say that's a factor. So I would just go ahead and say I'm pretty uninformed on this topic, and I wouldn't jump to one conclusion or the other. Like if I found out a friend of mine was saying that, I'm going to cut bait. That's going to be pretty easy. But, right. An employer is not your friend. And so it'll be interesting what comes out on this with the scraper thing. But yeah, it's a nuanced one, but an interesting one. It's interesting how we set it up earlier, kind of almost unintentionally, and then Aaron Gordon got traded, which is a bit more
hot off the press.
Off the press. Now we recorded it exactly this time, which is the time Aaron Gordon got. Well, I mean, I think that's what we had to talk about today. This was like the soul searching one, but I like it. We got to build the fan base. So we get 10. I was reading how to promote podcasts, so we got to talk about that. But,
right?
We got to figure it out.
Yeah, we'll do that again. Our next pre-podcast talk. Like, okay, how do we get some better distribution? And
exactly.
Whatever. Give us a review or other things.
Yeah, I know.
At the end of the podcast.
What do we got to say? We got to record a trailer, all that stuff. But yeah, we got to figure it out. But if you do like it, I don't know, subscribe, tell your friends, put the word out there, because we're committed to this. We have as much fun with it making it as we do listening to it ourselves afterwards, and which is good. I worked out to it the other day. I was like working out to me and my boy talking. This is such a new I would never have thought that would have been. Can you imagine back in the day if we got a tape deck and recorded us joking around, and then was like, what are you doing? I'm on my Walkman going for a jog. You'd be like, Justin has lost his damn mind right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. But, how the world has changed, man.
Yeah.
Now I just like, oh yeah, I'm what you doing? Just doing some curls, recapping my
just
talk,
quality control on our pod, you know what I mean? Just texting my boy that we got to tighten up the segments, But all good, Jeremy. Always good talking to you. I guess we'll just close it out there and see everybody next week.
Yes, sir.